Right. Good morning, everybody. Give me just a second. I have to actually wait until we're live to be able to pop out the chat. I'm still waiting on an answer back from Rumble about what's going on with that. But good news is at least the numbers on the back end are working, so I can do the ads, which I'm not planning on doing this morning, but got credit for the ones we've already done. So it's Firearms Friday, and I'm going with my right to keep it bare this morning. Bear arms, right to bear arms. Yes, sir. And we're going to talk about the right to bear arms this morning. And I've got a couple of stories that I want to get to before we get into a couple of DGUs this morning. The one that this one's tough, guys. This one's tough. Okay, so I have bottom line up front. The Trump administration, the Trump DOJ, is talking about banning transgenders from owning firearms. Aaron asks, "Can we ask for your personal gun reviews?" Okay, you know what? Let me address that real quick before I dig into this. Aaron, the fact is this: I am a tactical and strategic expert. I am an excellent gun fighter. Uh, I know the mechanics. I am not one who has spent a lot of time. Um, I don't read Guns and Ammo. I don't follow the industry trends on firearms and the like. But since you ask, it's something that I'm interested in, and so that may be something that I explore in the future. Pick up a new gun here and there and do a review of it, and y'all let me know if that's something that you guys would be interested in watching. Because for one, let's be real, politics is seasonal, and this show is largely a politics show, news, politics, etc. But I'm a big fan of guns, generally. I can't tell you I didn't do a deep dive on the, what was it, the Sig P92 or something that recently just went off when it was dropped. But that's the kind of news that I'd be interested in starting to follow and reporting on this channel. And here's another piece of it. I've got the land back here. I've got the land back here that I can set me up a firing range. I mean, I've got a shooting range back here, but once I get a corner cleared off for it, I want to do a discriminatory fire and fast target acquisition type range with steel targets and color and shape coordinated targets. When I used to train soldiers on this, we had an exercise where we would put up paper targets and they'd have colored shapes on them, right? So there'd be like a green circle, a blue triangle, and a red square, right? And from the control tower, you would shout at the soldiers, you would shout a color and a shape. And, the idea was you shout a shape and a color that didn't correspond. So if you got a green circle, a blue triangle, and a red square, then you shout blue square. And the idea is the soldier's going to put a round in the blue thing and the square thing. And if it's a green circle, like I said, and the guy shouts, "Hey," the guy shouts blue circle, there's a blue circle, then I expect you to put 2 rounds in the blue circle, because I want you to put 1 round to the blue thing and 1 round to the square thing. That's a discriminatory fire training. It's the pedagogy of training the brain to select targets. One of my favorite ideas, one of my favorite kind of training scenarios that you guys may have seen if you watch the show The Unit. They do a discriminatory fire game where they've basically got like 1,000 chickens in a pretty tight pen, and some of the chickens have been dyed blue and some of them have been dyed red, and most of them have not been dyed at all, right? So you got a bunch of just a field full of chickens, and they're all various breeds. So there's all kind of different natural feather coloring, but then like a half a dozen are blue and a half a dozen are red. And the guys are shooting with their main battle rifles, and they're being asked to conduct target discrimination. Shoot only the blue chicken. Let me tell you something, guys. When you've got a positively identified target that's moving around in a crowd, and you're trying to take a shot from overhead, I've trained with snipers. I was not a sniper. I didn't do that kind of mission, right? But I've trained on that kind of mission, and trying to pick one target out in a crowd like that and hit it while everybody's moving around, that right there, that's tough stuff. Sergeant Major says, I was trained to shoot first and ask questions later, then let God sort them out. Yeah. Surgical tactical removal of a high-value individual, a high-value target, is difficult. Mass casualty is way easier. Way easier. There are some concerns there, sure, but it sure is easier. It's a lot less effort. So let's get to the transgenders and guns. This one's tough. Okay. So let me read the article. Let me read part of the article to you first, and then we're going to talk about this a little bit. Trump DOJ is looking at ways to ban transgender Americans from owning guns. In the wake of the Minneapolis Catholic Church shooting, senior Justice Department officials are weighing proposals to limit transgender people's right to possess firearms, according to two officials familiar with the internal discussion. Okay, that right there, that's a red flag. That's a red flag on the whole story so far, right? Two officials. Oh, okay, who are these officials? Because one thing that we do know historically from the first administration and from the fact that we've seen more universal injunctions out of activist judges against Donald Trump than all other presidents combined, we see systemically there are people within the government who are actively working to harm the president, to harm the people, to defraud the people, and to deprive us of what should be the result of free and fair elections, where the people choose their representatives and their administration based on the promises those entities made. Right? So right off the rip, from the fact that I'm being hit with, from CNN, we've got two sources familiar with the matter. Tell you something. If I tell you a source close to the White House has intimated that Donald Trump is actually Kim Jong-un in a fat suit, in a mask, on stilts. If the case is that person is a homeless guy that I found on the street in front of the White House, and he told me that crazy story, then the originally reported statement, a source close to the White House said the ridiculous thing, then the statement that I have reported is technically true, because I have not made the fact claim that Donald Trump is Kim Jong-un in a fat suit on stilts. Rather, I have reported that someone else has made the fact claim. And of course, I can weasel word my way backward and say, oh, no, it's important to tell you what these people think. It's important to report on what some people are saying, because we need to be able to criticize it, critique it, et cetera, et cetera. Of course, if nobody ever calls me out on my bullshit reporting, where I use that ridiculous, a source close to the White House, anonymous source blather, if nobody ever calls me out on that, then I never have to backpedal on the, hey, I'm just reporting what somebody else said so that we can talk about it. If I'm never forced to backpedal on it because I'm not questioned on it, then the reporting, the headline to the average reader still feels like what I've reported is a fact claim. So I get to have the clout for making the fact claim without technically and legally having made the actual claim of fact. So anytime you see that anonymous source bullshit, I immediately, according to two officials familiar with the internal discussions, I immediately become skeptical of the whole thing. Because let's be real, the idea of taking gun rights away from anybody, even those people with whom we disagree or have, let's be frank here, have legitimate concerns about, the idea of just stripping rights away from people, that's a tough one. So with the transgender community, I've talked about this with the LGBT, the whole LGBT generally, and this extends to Democrats and Republicans. All right, most especially to Democrats and the whole alphabet soup of degeneracy that we deal with in public life. The facts are these. There are a lot of people who identify as LGBT, whatever, right? There are a lot of people who vote Democrat who don't subscribe to the crazy. Right? Now, okay, this is less true when you start talking about the transgenders. The whole transgender thing, that's a cult. That's a social contagion. The lesbians and gays, that's another question. But there are people who are gay, lesbian, who are perfectly reasonable. You may not even know that they have a proclivity. Hell, Kevin Spacey was a notoriously public figure who nobody really knew he was gay until he was in his 50s, and just kind of casually mentioned it in a conversation on a talk show. It was just, that was his private life, and he didn't discuss it publicly. Now, granted, we've since learned that there's at least some suspicion that there's some shenanigans going on with him and some people. But the point is, there are plenty of people out there who are gay or lesbian, etc. That just, they're not public about it. It's nobody's business, right? And if you'll remember, back in the 90s, the argument was always that the government shouldn't have any say in what we do in the privacy of our own homes. And a lot of conservatives, especially the more libertarian-leaning conservatives, myself included, I maintained back then that, hey, let them get married. Why should I care? In fact, my general position was that the Constitution does not in any way offer a secession of the authority from the states to the federal government on this topic, on the topic of marriage. There's nowhere in the Constitution that says that the question of marriage is one for government at all. Right? So there should be no marriage licenses. Right? I'm opposed to licenses generally. And that was my position on the matter. And to a large extent, I still maintain that. There are a lot of problems with the Obergefell decision that we're going to talk about more and more in the coming weeks and coming days and weeks, because there is some movement on Obergefell in the Supreme Court. But the fact is that the moderates in those camps don't matter. They don't. Because they have abdicated their authority on matters of politic by abdicating their responsibility in the same matters because they're not the activists, but they're activists in their community are out there actively speaking on their behalf, and they are not rebutting, they are not refuting the activities of their activists who, let's face it, are vulgar, are aggressive, are offensive, and are violent. Because those so-called moderates in the alphabet community are not activists against their public advocacy, at the end of the day, they have not only abdicated their authority by abdicating their responsibility, but they have essentially given tacit consent to the activities of their activists. Sergeant Major asks, can a moderate on either side win a close election? I don't think so. There may be some public sentiment shifting in that direction. There may be enough public sentiment right now saying that the left is crazy. Right there, I think, yeah. There are a lot of Democrats right now. Who was it? David Pacman just did a video about leaving the left. And he's basically a Democrat shill. He'll say any psychotic, child raping, baby murdering, genital mutilating thing you want him to for a paycheck. But he just did a video either yesterday or the day before talking about leftist purity testing and all that, and essentially, these guys are crazy and I can't do it anymore. And did his he had his Dave Rubin moment where he left the left a couple days ago. I suspect what really happened there, because this is just what Pacman does. He's not a good faith actor. I suspect what's happening there is he's recognizing the trend where we're just moving away from left-wing politics and toward more conservative positions, that he's recognizing that there's a change on the wind, and he's going to try to turn his mizzen mast and follow along. And yeah, so Be Controversial mentions gays against grooming. Yeah, they're the minority in that community. Yes, they do exist. That is a group, and they are the slim minority in that community. Most people have not heard about them, and that is largely because basically they don't have the support of their community. The gays against grooming, they do not have broad support from the left, the Democrats, or the LGBT community. And so their funding is not great. Their marketing is not great. Their branding is not great. I'm glad they're doing what they're doing, but it's weak. It's weak sauce. So the idea that we're going to disarm all the trannies, I ain't gonna lie. There's a part of me, there's a little bitty tyrannical piece of me that's totally on board with this. You know what? Hey, we've seen a bunch of these shootings. We've had 8 trans shooters in the past 2 years, and amusingly, for the past 2 years, they have been the bulk, the vast majority of the reported mass shootings. Now, take that statement with a grain of salt. Remember, whenever you hear the news say, the majority of recent mass shootings have been X, Y, and Z, remember, the vast overwhelming majority of so-called mass shootings, right? And by FBI, it's either the FBI or the CDC studies definition is three or more casualties, right? Right. That's three or more people are shot. Which that's a tricky number, right? You know, do you call it a mass shooting event if it's painfully the mall guy goes into the food court, pulls out a weapon, fires off a couple of shots, nobody gets hit, but a responsible armed gun owner puts the bad guy down before anybody's hurt? Does that count as this was a mass shooting event, even though nobody was hurt? But the vast majority of these mass shootings are black on black, gang crime, drive-by shootings. But it's reported as if a white guy who shoots up, who goes in and conducts a mass casualty attack, and a black guy who does it are unrelated activities. And in a way they are. But the fact is that if there's a problem, the thing that the mainstream news refers to as a mass shooting essentially never happens statistically compared to drive-bys in Chicago. Right? There are more mass shootings in Chicago in a given month. If you consider them by the same criteria, which is, ignoring the race of the shooter and just the sheer number of victims, then you've got more mass shootings in Chicago in a month than have been reported since Columbine. Right? So the idea that you could just disarm a group of people should be anathema to those of us who are dedicated and interested in the Constitution. Now, that said, let me just bring this in for comparison. This is a court finding from what is it? Decided September 4th. So this was yesterday, right? And in the finding, this is in the District of Columbia Court of Appeals. I'm not going to read this all the way through and go through the details of the case, but I want to show you that the finding happened. And basically the argument is that in Washington, D.C., it is constitutionally tolerable to forbid 18 to 21-year-olds, 18, 19, and 20-year-olds, so you have to be 21, from being licensed to carry a firearm. Oh, now, hold on a minute. Equal protection under the law, right? Is an 18-year-old old enough to vote, to join the Army? Is an 18-year-old an adult, or is he not? My contention would be that he is. The only other reasonable way to argue for what makes a person a functioning citizen, right? I love the Starship Troopers idea of service guarantees citizenship. If I had my way, the vote would be restricted to people who owned land, were married, with kids, net positive tax contributors, with some sort of legitimate public service background, right? So, you were a cop, veteran, some elected officials, city council members, something. You worked on a road crew, right? Had done something that was contributory to your community. In fact, I might even kick cops and veterans off of that and say everybody should be required to do something in their community. right? If you haven't done community service work for your city, maybe you don't need to vote in that city, because maybe you're not interested enough in that city. You're not interested enough in your state, in your country, right? And I mean, that's a whole rabbit hole that's worth going down in another context. But my point being here, and Sergeant Major, I'm with you there. He says, I would rather see voting 21 be the voting age. Yeah, I would rather see the voting age raised than the carry age lowered. In fact, I'd be pretty comfortable with either 20 or 21 just being the age of majority. I'd rather see 20 actually, because it's a nice round number. Maybe 21 because it's the first year in you are no longer 20. You are now in your 20s. But I digress. Point being, so we've got a a DC court just yesterday saying, yo, it's totally cool if you want to just pick a group of people based on an arbitrary group designation and decide to strip away from them their constitutional rights. Okay, so in that context, this headline doesn't seem so crazy. In fact, in that context, this headline is just what the government does. Now, that said, the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. That's sacrosanct, right? I've said many times before on the show, there's a big damn difference between the First Amendment and the Second Amendment. The First Amendment says the Congress shall make no law, right? And then restricting the right, and then it lists the 5 rights, right? Freedom of speech, press, assembly, petition, and religion, right? The Congress shall make no law. So there is good legal theory. There's good legal theory that the First Amendment only restricts the federal government from interfering with your individual rights to speech, press, petition, assembly, and religion. But the Second Amendment says the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. So let's think about this. What does that mean to you? What does that mean? That means that when the founders, when the signers, and when the men that ratified the Bill of Rights put their names to that, they discussed it, they argued about it, and they agreed that we don't want the federal government to tell us what we can say or how we can worship, but we don't want to completely hobble ourselves in being able to enforce standards of decency or even holding a state religion within our individual sovereign states, who, by the way, have their authority protected against infringement by the federal government on matters to which it has not been enumerated by the 10th Amendment, and that's also not a fucking accident. But, on the Second Amendment, we all agree that the states need their well-regulated militias, and well-regulated militias require an armed citizenry. And this is key. We in our individual sovereign states who are now signatories to the organizational paradigm we will henceforth call the federal government, intend to retain individually to our states not just the authority, not just the right, but the strategic, logistical, and tactical capacity to engage in armed conflict against that same organization, henceforth called the federal government, because from time to time the tree of liberty must be watered with the blood of tyrants and patriots alike. We said we're going to hold on to these rights. Now, all that said, so, the idea of stripping the right to keep and bear arms away from anyone is anathema to the Constitution. It is anathema to what it means to be an American. And I have been hypercritical of Donald Trump on his Second Amendment creds, because in his first administration, following the Las Vegas shooting that nobody ever talks about, deadliest mass casualty event in U.S. history, mass shooting event in U.S. history. Obviously, it wasn't deadlier than 9/11, which is a mass casualty event, not a mass shooter event. Nobody ever talks about it. But right after that, he gave up. He gave in. He allowed for that ridiculous bump stock ban to go into effect. And I've argued many times that I think what happened there, and this is what I honestly believe on this, is that at the beginning of his presidency, Donald Trump, I'm not sure he thought he was going to win. Right? I'm not 100% sure that his original campaign was intended to be more than a publicity stunt. And then somewhere down the campaign road, he figured out, oh shit, we're doing this. And then he gets in office and he was politically naive. And the result of that naivete is he began his first administration, under the sincere belief that we disagree on things, but we're all good people and we're all trying to get to the same place. We have different ideas about how to get there. We all want Americans to be free and prosperous and happy and safe. We just don't always agree on how to get there. And so he thought, in his naivety, that Democrats could be trusted to act in good faith, and that if he gave them an inch, that's all they would take. But guys, Democrats are greedy little whores. They're not interested in just the tip. They want to take the whole damn thing. So every time you give up a little bit to the enemy, they're going to take a little more. Retreat is not a tactically unsound activity because of the cowardice that one might assume is required for one to retreat, or the uncommon valor and bravery that one should understand is required to hold the ground even against overwhelming odds. Retreat is tactically unsound unless you are already and definitively completely lost, because the winning of a war is the holding of ground. If you cannot put boots on territory and retain it, possess it, and enforce that possession with the force of violence, then you are not winning, right? You don't win the Super Bowl by running the ball backwards. You don't win the basketball game by shooting in the other hoop. Right? That's not how it works. You win by moving forward, taking ground, and holding it. So I could even look at this and criticize Trump and say that he's weak on the Second Amendment. I'm going to be a little generous here because we've seen so much out of this president in this new administration. I'm going to hold on to hope that what's actually happening here is one of two things. Either this is being wildly misreported, and the real conversation. Let's say hypothetically there was a real conversation, and that conversation was rather than, hey, you know what? We don't want fucking trannies to have guns anymore because. What if instead the conversation was, hey, what if it's reasonable to say that a mentally unstable person should not be trusted with firearms? And it just happens that transgenders have a clear, diagnosed DSM-5 mental illness. And more to the point, there are two primary common denominators among almost all of the mass shooters historically over the last 25 years. There are two factors that they almost all share in common. And I don't think there's been one that lacked both factors, right? They have all been some combination of fatherless homes and SSRIs. Fatherless homes and SSRIs. Those two together. I mean, a fatherless home is one of the highest, one of the most reliable predictors of criminality. Right? Forget mass shooters for a moment. Just crime. Gang involvement, career criminals, breaking and entering, basically all of the symptoms that one would expect of a shitbird with no job. Oh, you can't find a job? I'm sorry your daddy didn't love you. I'm sorry your daddy didn't love you. Y'all, my dad stuck around, spent a lot of time at work, and don't take this the wrong way, old man. I'd have liked to have seen you more when I was younger, but now that I'm a grown-ass man with a bunch of kids and a job, I understand it in a way that I wish I didn't have to. But, man's got shit he's got to do, and shit he's got to do includes feeding the family, right? But, I want y'all to understand that part of that also includes that by the time I was 15 years old, I understood some things. I understood some important things. I understood that my dad worked a lot, that I was never hungry, that there was always a roof over my head, right? And I understood that old man, when I was 15 years old, was not going to buy my fucking cigarettes and whiskey. So I got a job and went to work. I mean, and so I was able to engage in responsible, premeditated juvenile delinquency through my own efforts. To be clear, I was not a heavy smoker when I was 15 years old, but I did like a cold beer and a cigar from time to time. And it's also fair to say that probably has more to do with me having had a job at the time than the other way around. That causal relationship gets a little muddy in the memory. But point being, I'm talking about taking the weapons away from transgenders. Like I said, restricting the right to keep and bear arms is anathema to what it is to be an American. And I am just about a Second Amendment absolutist. But if I'm being honest, I would rather we rearm all the felons. I would rather we return the right to keep and bear arms to every felon who has completed their sentence, paid their debt to society, what have you, to every felon who has completed their program and been paroled, gotten out. We say sometimes we say people are ex-cons or ex-convicts or ex-felons. The fact is, for the vast majority of them, that shit follows them around for the rest of their lives. I would rather see them armed than see somebody who is clearly mentally unstable armed. Right? Yeah, Be Controversial points out they can request the restoration of that right. They can. Stryker says the two commonalities are SSRIs and known to the feds. Okay, 3 commonalities then. 3 commonalities. Fatherless home, SSRIs, and we had them on our radar. But damn, you distracted. You broke my train of thought there, brother. List the bureaucracy, draw dims. There was some weird shit around that. Armed sane citizenry. They can request. Yeah, they can request. Yes. So Be Controversial. Yes, they can. They can request the restoration of that right. And I've got a few buddies who got sideways of the law and have begun that process. I don't personally know anybody, at least that I know of, who has successfully navigated that process. As I understand it, that process to have the right restored is a difficult process. It's time consuming. Nunya, Texas on the back 20 says trans first, then who? You're 45 minutes late to the conversation, so I'm not gonna relitigate that. I talked a minute ago about the 18 and 20-year-olds in the DC decision, so go check that out. But it is a salient point, Nunya. I don't mean to dismiss you. It's just we've already covered it. And that is the question. Just like pot is the gateway drug. Democrats have a hard time with drugs, and as soon as they get that first little kiss of something, the next thing you know is the disarming the trannies is going to turn into, well, hey, how about red flag laws? How about domestic abusers? Oh, well, hold on a minute. Are we talking about convicted domestic abusers? Or are we talking about my girlfriend's fat buddy called the cops and lied about me, and now all of a sudden you're coming and clearing out my rack? No, fuck you. Right? No dice. So I don't think that just straight up saying that you identify as trans is a grounds on which you should be disarmed. Now, this is categorically different than the argument about whether or not trans people should be allowed to serve in the military. That's obviously a no. There is no room in the military for people who are not at peak performance. And that's mental, physical, moral. Right? a transgender, there may be trainees out there who are in peak physical condition because they're taking, because whatever additional hormone replacement therapy is going on there, but they're not mentally fit to serve. And part of the whole transgender movement is the argument about the gender reassignment surgery. You should not be entering the military with a pre-existing medical condition that requires taxpayer dollars to correct. For example, if you're flat-footed, if you're colorblind, if you have asthma, if you have certain amounts of bee allergies, right? If you're missing an arm or a leg, if you're wheelchair bound, if you're just a little too fat, and I mean just a little too fat, right? Yeah, Be Controversial says, I did a presentation on that in college. The Air Force had transition services, and my argument was that even if you agreed with transitioning, it's still inappropriate. Absolutely inappropriate. So that's, let me go back to the white pill. So my kind of hopeful take is that the conversation was more about mental illness and SSRIs. And I'm still not saying we need to disarm people that are diagnosed with mental illness, because mental illness is a broad category. Mental illness is a very broad category. I'm keeping my guns. Please believe. But I got blown up a couple of times and had to tote halves of dudes to, medevac choppers, and so every now and then I'll smoke a half a pack of cigarettes and drink a glass of bourbon, listening to old funeral dirges and just cry into my beard for an hour or two, and then I'm good. Right? I avoid large crowds because they're tactically non-secure. I generally don't like to be in a large crowd. So, I might have a little bit of something rattling around up here from getting blown up a few times. If you want to come for my guns, you had better bring enough to count. So Nunya says slippery slope. I don't like it, brother. I ain't trying to fight you on it. I hate comments like that, because you could be agreeing or disagreeing with me, and I just don't know what to do with it. So, because there's a slippery slope on both sides. There's a slippery slope in either direction. That one of the most difficult things about standing on the moral high ground is every direction you step is down. And that slope is slippery in every direction. But yes, pry it from my crazy dead hands. Absolutely. Absolutely. And full send, we are prepared for the full send. That is part of the math at the Brushfire Mind. Now, here's the other white pill hopeful interpretation of this whole conversation. What if the thing that's really happening is old Donnie Two Scoops is pulling a rope-a-dope on the bad guys? Because here's the other side of that. We get down here to what'd she say? Instead of actual solutions, the administration is again choosing to scapegoat and target a small, vulnerable population, the GLAAD spokesperson said, noting that transgender people are less than 2% of the U.S. population, but 4 times as likely to be victims of crime. Yeah, they're also apparently more likely. To commit mass murder. Everyone deserves to be themselves, be safe, and be free from violence and discrimination. That's interesting. So GLAAD is now pro Second Amendment. Oh, is that right? Right? And there's Pam Bondi. There's okay. I must have scrolled past it. There's another. What's her name? Lauren Powell. Maybe that was in the other article. I'm sorry, guys. I there was another quote that I wanted to read you, but it appears to have gotten away from me. But anyway, but yeah, there's excuse me. There is a legitimate possibility that Donald is pulling a rope-a-dope here, and the result is that you're going to see far left groups, historically anti-Second Amendment far left groups, coming out in support of transgenders keeping their Second Amendment rights. Well, here's the thing, though: if they're forced to make the argument for trannies to keep their guns, then it's kind of like when Hunter Biden was up on charges over illegally owning a firearm after having lied on the background check and saying that he didn't use drugs. Well, I'd have loved to have seen that go to the Supreme Court and a little arm twisting, get the liberal justices on side for Hunter Biden, and then the rest of the court is going to say, well, 2A. And then the liberal justices come in and say, well, Hunter Biden. And the result is that the Supreme Court says, oh, no more background checks because they're unconstitutional. Yes, background checks are unconstitutional. Yes, background checks are unconstitutional. Forget the Second Amendment for a second. The Fourth Amendment, securing my person's properties and papers. So, I mean, a background check, a federal background check is a violation of your Fourth Amendment, your Fifth Amendment, and your Second Amendment. The right to keep and bear shall not be infringed. I shall be secure in my person's properties and papers. I have a right to privacy. I can't be required to incriminate myself under the Fifth Amendment. Under the Fourth Amendment, you can't take my person, properties, papers, my life, my liberty, my freedom, without due process of law and an order from a judge founded on reasonable suspicion. Yes, background checks are unconstitutional. Background checks are unconstitutional. I cannot say that enough. I cannot better articulate that. So the white pill here, the hopeful take is that the Donald is playing a rope-a-dope on the libs to try and get a bunch of Democrats and sociopaths to come out and say, hey, shall not be infringed. And then the rest of us can go, hey! Hey! In fact, I think I'm going to go buy a bag of Scooby Snacks, start carrying around with me, and every time I see a Democrat or a tranny in a shall not be infringed t-shirt, I'll give them a piece of candy. Good job, little bud. Good job. Maybe that's the one we need. Maybe that's the next man on the street video I should do. Need a volunteer videographer to come out and follow me around while I patronize Democrats with snacks. That'd be fantastic. Okay. Holy shit, I did not think I was going to spend an hour talking about that topic. I could put a pin in it here, but I'm gonna do a little something. I'm gonna do a little extra here. I'm gonna go the extra mile here. In fact, here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna play you guys. I'm gonna give you guys one of the shorts videos. while I go grab a little more coffee, and then I've got another story I want to cover, and I've got a couple of DGUs pulled up. See how long y'all stick around. See how long I can handle not getting tired of you. Let's do this.
You don't need 30 rounds to protect yourself.
You want us alive when they eat us.
Put that double-barrel shotgun and fire 2 blasts.
Which were then thrown at officers. Demonstrators also hurled fireworks.
Telling you Molotov cocktails work. Anytime I had a problem and I threw a Molotov cocktail, boom, right away. I had a different problem.
He makes a strong case.
Oh, it sure would be nice if we had some grenades, don't you think?
Modern problems require modern solutions.
Ooh, how's that for timing? Yeah, buddy. I wasn't sure if I could make it all the way to the coffee pot and back before that short was over. So, another white pill, right? Love the white pills. I should drop a link to the bulk pack of Altoids that I buy because they help. So in our here's the white pill. NRA ILA from the NRA what is it, the something leader, anyway. Florida, Second Amendment sales tax holiday signed by governor. Y'all. Okay, Nunya, Texas on the back 20 says, that was quick. I didn't even get out of the chair. Brother, I had to run out of the studio, across the yard, up the deck, into the house, to the coffee pot, and back. I was, my fat ass was boogieing. But let me get back to the story. So the Second Amendment sales tax holiday signed by governor. Governor Ron DeSantis recently signed the Florida budget for fiscal year 2025-2026, which includes a Second Amendment tax holiday season from September 8th through December 31st. Oh, okay. Be Controversial says, and you didn't spill it? I used to do foot patrols in Afghanistan with a cup of coffee in my hand, B. Right. I take that shit seriously, and my stability is rock solid. That is a hard-won combat skill. Also, a wide mouth cup helps. So, the NRA is thankful for Governor DeSantis' strong support, along with legislative leaders who prioritize including these critical tax-saving measures for Floridians. Despite being a lifetime member, I'm not a huge fan of the NRA because, well, the Brady bill and the NRA, I see in a lot of ways very much like the Republican Party. They're not a good advocate. They're not a good champion of our rights, but they're the one we have. There are several other smaller gun rights groups that do a much, much better job. But that aside, the tax holiday will provide tax relief on purchases of firearms, firearm accessories, ammunition, bows, crossbows, and accessories for bows and crossbows. For a complete list of exempted items, please click here. And let's check it out. Florida. Consumers can purchase qualifying hunting, fishing, and camping supplies exempt from tax during the 2025 hunting, fishing, and camping sales tax holiday. For consumers, does this... Okay, there you go. ammunition, firearms, firearms accessories, charging handles, cleaning kits, holsters, pistol grips, sights or optics, stocks, bows, crossbows, bow and crossbow accessories, arrows, bolts, squirrels, quivers, releases, sights and optics, wrist guards, and a whole list of camping and fishing supplies. Oh, it's not even had my number for. I think Mario just put. That's hilarious. You should call Aaron. You should call him back and you should call him back and eviscerate him, excoriate him for missing the show this morning. Nunya, Texas says we got a better tax exemption. It's called cash person to person. Yeah, but I'll admit my favorite way to buy firearms is in a parking lot in a small town from people who I met at Republican gatherings or things of the sort, right? You know, if somebody I've known for a long time, yeah. I definitely prefer it cash person to person. In fact, I prefer all my transactions that way if I could get them. But unfortunately, I don't know anybody building cameras and film equipment in their or drones in their basement. So that one's off the table. But tax holiday, Florida. Aaron, speaking of Mario, we might just have to take a road trip and go down and buy some guns in Florida, right? I'll have to do a little more research on how this works. So Florida's got a tax holiday on buying firearms. Does that mean I can go down there as not a Florida resident, buy guns in Florida and then bring them home? Because I might just have to play that game. Right. I mean, that might be the right move just to, build up the ammo tree a little taller. Right. I never have too many rounds on hand, safety first. Right. So, I mean, that's a massive white pill as far as I'm concerned. And, much like over the last several years, we have seen, Nunya says he's pretty sure you got to have Florida ID. Yeah, that probably, but we'll see what happens. Mario has a driver's license in Florida. But anyway, damn, that joke was so bad I lost my train of thought. I forgot what I was going to say. Nope, completely lost my train of thought. So we're done with this one. I'm going to go ahead and pop over to some DGUs. We're going to start with this one. No, we're going to go to this one because it's kind of a feel-good story. I say kind of a feel-good story because, well, here, I'm going to play you the video.
Are you creeping around down here? I'm the bear guy. As you can tell, this is my house and my bear arms, and I'm bearing arms. And I think there's a bear down there. Let's go check it out.
So to be clear, before this video and this incident, this guy was called the bear guy because he's a right to bear arms advocate. And he does the bear arms joke, same as I did this morning. In tribute to this, those of you who watch the show know I usually wear a Hawaiian shirt, and I have gun-themed Hawaiian shirts for Firearms Friday. But I went ahead with the bear arms because, one, it's rapidly approaching too cool to wear these shirts early in the morning out here. And two, a little tribute to Veritas de Vincent Aki. So, yeah, no shit.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
This is one of those moments, right? You hear the lefties say, why does anybody need 30-round magazine? Why do you ever need a 30-round magazine? You don't need a 30-round magazine to defend your home. Okay, he only fired 7 rounds into the bear. Fair play. Not gonna lie, dealing with a bear in the house, I might have thrown a couple of toenails in there, right? Come downstairs, there's a bear in the kitchen. But let's be clear about what just happened here, right? You know, I know that if this were to occur at my home, right now, my house is a ranch style place. There's not a set of stairs to go down inside the house, but I'm deaf as a post. You know, I got $10,000 worth of hearing aids that the VA gave me because I am deaf without my hearing aids in, right? And I'm an old fat guy, so sleep apnea, I got the CPAP. So middle of the night, somebody shuffling around in the house, you're not going to wake me up. But you want to hear something funny? You hear a funny story? My wife's name is Felicia. And when I first met my wife, she was introduced to me by one of her best friends as Fifi. She was in uniform, right? Seaman Barrett. And she was introduced to me as Fifi. And when her friend introduced her as Fifi, she said, you know, like one of those little yappy dogs. And I laughed my ass off. But y'all, when they say sometimes you got to let the big dog eat, that starts with the Chihuahua yapping and running his mouth and waking the big shepherd up on the porch who comes down to see what's going on. And that's kind of how it's going to work in my house. I sleep like the dead and I'm deaf as a post. But I promise you, if there's some shuffling noise going around in the house, my hot young wife is going to punch me in the shoulder for everything she's worth until I sit up and go murder something. And that's the thing, though. That something might be a home intruder, right? Not likely where I live. There's no people out here except for Todd and his wife down the street, right? But yeah, she sure enough hears the doors open and close on the other side of the damn house. I know you do, babe. I'm sorry. I try to be quiet when I'm in and out for coffee in the mornings. Anyway, but it might be a home intruder, like so many of the DGU stories that we've covered in the past. Sure, it might be a home intruder. Or it might be, and this, in where we live, is actually the more likely, a fucking bear. Now, I might be able to talk down a home intruder. I might even be able to come around the corner, draw down and say, yo, sit your ass down and wait. Right? And, okay, really, the conversation that happens then is, so he says, oh, you got me. I guess you're going to call 911. And I'm going to say, why? Nobody knows you're here. But you're not talking the bear down. You're not going to politely request that he wait for the authorities to arrive. Now, we never find out how big this bear is in the video, but we do get some more conversation out of Homeboy.
Hey, it's been a wild few days. Yes, I'm the guy who shot the bear in his kitchen, and I just wanted to answer a few of the questions that I've been getting, the most common questions. Number one, did you get to keep the bear? No, I didn't get to keep the bear. I called the sheriff. I called Parks and Wildlife. If you shoot a bear in self-defense, you don't get to keep it. Too bad. How did it get in? It climbed up on a second-story deck, jimmied open a cracked window. It gets hot here during the day, but cools off a lot at night because we're in the mountains and we don't have AC, so it's nice to leave the windows open. Jimmied open that window, pushed in the screen. That's how it got in. Is your hearing okay? Yeah, my hearing's fine. If you're perceptive, I had a suppressor on my gun. I suppress pretty much all my guns. Did you know it was a bear? No, I did not. What gun did you use? Yeah, everybody wants to know what gun. I used a 5.56 Geisley Super Duty 11.5 inch. I love this gun. Probably be my favorite AR forever now. Do you have any new holes in your house? No, I do not. I shot the bear 7 times. The bear ate all 7 rounds. One fragment went through the bear and just barely nicked my floor, and the ammo performed flawlessly, which leads me to the next question, which is, in my opinion, the high IQ question. What ammo did you use? I used Hornady Critical Defense, 55 grain, and man, FUDs are punching the air right now because you can shoot a bear with 5.56. That's it. That's probably all you're going to get.
I tell you from personal experience, you can kill anything with 5.56. I mean, it might take a drum of 5.56 through a 2.49, but you can kill anything with 5.56. And Be Controversial says there's a lot of bear for rounds to go through. Yeah, and he pointed out that he wasn't allowed to keep the bear. That's a tragedy. I mean, I gotta say, you know, like I cracked a couple jokes about how we're not going to call the cops because nobody knows you're here. If I just had to kill a bear in the kitchen, I don't see myself calling anybody. I'm probably going to butcher it because I don't know if you've ever done it, but bear makes for a pretty good ground burger meat. You know, I mean, as long as you get the fat blend right, it's fucking good meat. And a lot of it, you know. Even a small bear is going to stock that freezer for a hot damn minute. And I ain't going to be mad about having a bearskin rug either. Or a bearskin coat. Right? Would never have occurred to me to call somebody. You know, oh, a bear broke into the house. I mean, what are the cops going to do? Come and take a report? For what? They're going to aggravate me. They're going to waste my time. They're going to ask me for my ID, violate my Fourth Amendment rights, make unreasonable insistences, and then steal my property. Yo, if I just killed something on my property, that is my property. Right? I'm not even gonna relitigate the wonderful conversations we've had in the past about recreational cannibalism. Bears make good burgers. Right? If it was Bambi that had wandered into the house and the only option was to put some rounds in him and put him down, in season or out of season, like, no, he was in my kitchen. It's always the season when you found your way into the kitchen. Right? That's easy. That's easy math right there. The grocery bill is easy math. And 911 doesn't factor into that shit. So, y'all, that's going to be the show for today. And I guess today's safety brief is, you know, gentlemen, I know you're out there working hard. I know you're doing what you got to do to put food on the table, keep a roof over your heads. Here's your safety brief. Get you a hot young wife. If you're not already married, pay attention. Find one that's worth keeping. Because one day, you just might need a sentient alarm clock to wake your ass up in the middle of the night and go handle business. Thanks for watching today, guys. We love you, and we will see you tomorrow evening at 2100 to begin the three-part series leading up to 9/11. Y'all be safe, and we'll see you tomorrow night, 2100, right here. You can tune in from anywhere at 2100 tomorrow night, but we'll kick the freeloaders off of YouTube, Facebook, X, etc. at about a quarter after. So what you need to do is before 21:15 tomorrow night, you need to have a Rumble account. You need to be signed in. It could be a free account. You need to be signed in, and you need to have left a comment in the live chat so that you're eligible to win one free month of premium before we kick everybody off and go behind the paywall at 21:15. Or go ahead and click down in the description, right? You can click down in the description here, and you'll see a link down here in the description for. Oh no, I didn't put the link in this one. Okay, I take it back. Go watch yesterday's episode and click on the link in the description to start your free Rumble account, or to get the use the studio promo code to get a discount on the Rumble premium subscription. Subscribe to the Brushfire Mind. You'll get access to all the other big boys that are behind the paywall too, like your Steven Crowders, Tim Pool, Dr. Disrespect, Salty Cracker, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that'll give you a free pass, or that'll give you a pass to get behind the paywall and watch the deep dives that we do. The deep dives are a lot of fun, but I highly recommend you buckle in, bring you a drink and some snacks, because we tend to go 2 to 3 hours on the deep dives. And we're bringing you a good one tomorrow night. So y'all be safe out there. Don't drink, don't drive drink, don't fry bacon naked, and don't call the cops if you shoot a bear in the kitchen. Just eat the fucking bear. We love you, and we'll see you tomorrow.